enough of that family legacy to create a pattern of decision-making that resulted in a life that just didn't fit. She was making it work, but I sensed she was like the duck that seems to glide gracefully across the pond until you look just below the surface where the picture is one of chaos and turmoil. She knew it too. Since then, I have watched Libby instinctively put all of the life laws I talk about so often into action, and I have seen her reinvent her life. By having the courage to open the door on the family skeletons and let some light shine in, Libby freed herself from her past. She found the courage to leave a marriage that, despite all the best attempts, was not to be. She redoubled her efforts to build a new career around her true gifts, even to shed the unwanted pounds and seemingly years that held her back from her best physical health and well-being. Although it certainly was a lot to tackle in just a couple of years, Libby maintains that if she can do it, anyone can do it. Maybe that's why I've come to respect and appreciate her as a human being as much as I rely on her instincts and judgment as a professional. On the surface, we might not seem to have much in common, but in many ways we speak different dialects of the same language. I have learned a tremendous amount from traveling hopefully, and I know it is a journey that you don't want to miss.
Chapter 1. Getting Past Your Past. Understanding the 5 steps to jumpstart your life. To travel hopefully is a better thing than to arrive. Robert Louis Stevenson. I was my father's favorite. There would have been my oldest brother, David, but when he died, I became not only the official middle child of the remaining 5, but also heir to Dad's affection, a limited, qualified affection, with many complex strings attached, although I didn't realize it until much later. I always thought of my dad as sophisticated and charismatic, an accomplished psychiatrist and brilliant healer, a military doctor who seemed so authoritative and dashing in his dress whites with all his ribbons and medals. He looked just like Gregory Peck and Captain Newman, M.D. As I sat by his hospital bed with my youngest son, Zach, who had insisted on coming with me to Tampa in case it was the last time he would see his ailing grandpa, I thought about how difficult it was for my father to use his gifts of caring and compassion for anyone in his own life, let alone himself. It took me years to fully comprehend that my father's emotional detachment colored my life and shaped my relationships, making me as desperate for love as I was sure that I didn't deserve it. As I watched Dad drift in and out of sleep while Zach played with the new Beanie Baby that we just bought at the gift shop, I realized that though my father had been in and out of hospital since I was a teenager, this time he wouldn't be coming home. I read Zach his Beanie's adoption papers and burst into tears. It said on the tiny heart-shaped tag that the toy bear had been named Ariel for a little girl who died of AIDS at age 7, not much older than my son was then. I was overwhelmed by pain and sadness. Years of it came rushing to the surface as I held my sweet boy in my arms and tried not to frighten him with my tears. That's when I determined to change my father's legacy in those last days of his life, and in changing his, change my own. As a veteran communications and public relations executive, now running my own coaching and consulting firm, I was sought after as an expert in guiding my clients to identify and articulate what made them unique in their marketplace, and then build a brand around it. My motto was passion, planning, and perseverance. And recently I've become more focused on working with individual and corporate clients to understand how their past affected their future, so they could determine if the energy they were expending was truly getting them where they wanted to go. Now here I was, being put to my own test. As I sat by my father's bedside during his last days, I knew that as he was preparing to leave this life behind, I was beginning to build a new life. My little one and I let Grandpa rest while we did what any heartsick mother and son would do. We rented a bumblebee yellow Mustang convertible and hit the road for an afternoon of alligator farms and amusement parks. I want to talk about how you can jumpstart your life, just like I did mine. It took me a long time to realize how much of my personal story, that is, my beliefs about myself, my value system, and decision-making process, had been shaped by my family's story. Finally, at the age of 40, when I found the courage to admit that I was flat out miserable, and that the image of the successful professional I presented to the outside world had little relationship to who I was on the inside, I realized I had merely fulfilled a legacy designed by my family instead of by me. That insight was the first step in a profound process of self-healing that I've come to call traveling hopefully. Traveling hopefully is a way of moving through the world, the infinite number of decisions we make on a daily basis, which, when woven together, form the pattern of our being. Sometimes we make our choices, large and small, based on a set of beliefs about ourselves that we didn't create, but rather accepted. When I recognized I was living a life built on the shaky foundation of my family legacy, my father's emotional distance, my mother's bitterness, my stepmother's mental illness, I understood that I had allowed my history to define my present and determine my future. Once I accepted the fact that I was living a life that was more a reflection of that legacy than true to who I really was, I began the difficult but rewarding process of personal excavation. I began to strip away the facade that I'd been showing to the world for so long that it had become my reality, although it bore little resemblance to the real me. Only then did I begin to see myself as a living work in progress, a hopeful traveler intent on finding the purpose and the passion that would allow me to create the life I envisioned for myself. That process would allow me to write my own story and to help you write yours. Getting past your past and overcoming your family story so you can find your most joyful, passionate self isn't easy, but it is possible. There's an old expression, the easy road often becomes hard, but the hard road often becomes easy. We're not going to take the easy road, but I'm going to make the hard road a little easier by showing you the 5 steps to jumpstart your life. Jumpstarting your life is a process of intentionally designing a specific plan of action so you can envision and then actively create the life you want instead of waiting around for it to happen. Even if you're at the top of your game with a great job and a loving family, maybe you've heard that little nagging voice asking you why you're working so much and enjoying it so little, or why you wanted desperately to have children and yet have no time to spend with them. Or maybe you're just not sure anymore what would make you want to leap out of bed in the morning and tackle the day. I'm not saying that once you've conjured up a mental image of the life you want, that it will magically begin to materialize. Not at all. But once you understand what it means to jumpstart your life in work, recreation, friendships, and family life, you can begin to remove the roadblocks that are keeping you stuck in place and start moving forward toward the life you want. Do you remember the Robert Louis Stevenson quote, "To travel hopefully is a better thing than to arrive"? Well, that may be the one lesson I took with me when I quit graduate school. I certainly didn't take the master's degree in psychology that I'd planned on. Hopeless, I lost all sense of direction and gave up. One of my